Hi there. I want to redo a video that I've already done and post it again. It's my channel was stagnant for I don't know a long time, and I did like one video and maybe 6-7 month period, another video. So because of that, it doesn't really the algorithms don't really help it along. Plus the content, the type of content, I'm sure Google minimizes the type of notifications, because when in your content you mention things like God and Jesus Christ, I'm sure it gets limited by Google and things like that. So also, I'm probably not just that interesting, but it's an important video, and I'm going to kind of repeat it here. It's legal versus lawful. So I just want to kind of recap it and go over it again, repost it. The difference between legal and lawful. So legal is another, if you take legal and that's like a root word. The word legislation, legalities, all these things are the same. Then you have lawful. And if you think of like the law of gravity, right? You can't change that. You can't deny it. You can't avoid it. You can't do anything about the law of gravity. It is what it is. It's never going to change. It's always there. So whereas, and that's true with God's law, right? And God's law is real simple, okay? Jesus said, love your neighbor and love God. So there's basically two laws, and in these two laws are all the laws that God ever made up. If you love God and you love your neighbor, that's basically, you can't violate the 10 Commandments if you're doing these two things. Whereas legislation can change day to day, month to month, year to year. It's a relative thing. It's like a moving target depending on who's in office. There could legislation is basically politicians getting together, writing up legislation, voting on it, passing it, and then implementing it and policing it through a police force and things like that. But I want mainly Christians, anybody's welcome to this information, but I want folks to know that legislation and law are not the same thing. And as Christians, our job is to uphold God's law. It's not to uphold legislation. One of my personal beliefs is that I'll go ahead, like when in Rome, do as the Romans. I'll go ahead and I will abide by your legislation until one of three things occurs. It gets in the way of my safety, my freedom, or my faith. I won't let it come in contradiction to either of these three things. So for instance, if I think in the last video I used the example, if I have to speed to avoid a car wreck, then that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to worry about oh no, I'm breaking some rule that says I have to stay at this, I can't go over this mile per hour. I'm going to do what I have to do to protect myself. And of course, in that, obeying the law, God's law, loving your neighbor, is not putting a neighbor in danger as well, or not sacrificing him for me. So it's just important to understand this as a Christian. I've actually been in congregations where they said you're sinning if you don't wear your seatbelt, and that has nothing to do with loving your neighbor or loving God. It might be smart, but nobody can tell you what's going to happen. I know people that have survived accidents because they did not have a seatbelt on. They were tossed out of the car, and then the car turned into a crushed tin can. So actually not having a seatbelt saved their life. So Christians do not have to obey legislation. It's not a sin to break some code or something written by a politician. Laws are absolute. They come from God. It's never going to change. Ignorance of the law is no excuse, and that's true. And that's talking about loving God and loving your neighbor. There's no excuse for that. It's already coded in your DNA when you were created by God. There's certain things you know are wrong. You know it's wrong to walk up to somebody and slap them. You know it's wrong to throw a rock through your neighbor's window. There is no excuse because this stuff is already coded in you. There is an excuse for not knowing the legislation because every day they could be passing new legislation and nobody's sitting down and following this daily and reading the law books and the codes and the statutes that these cities and counties are coming up with. So that's just ridiculous to say that ignorance of the legislation is no excuse. In fact, in the last video, I also said that if you were to take all the legislation around the world, it would fill up many football stadiums. And that's true. I mean, just stacks and stacks of paper would just take up, probably miles or, acres, vast acres of land that, man just has this need to leave their mark in this world. It's this pride thing. Every politician wants to leave their mark. They want to say, look what I did, or that was my law, or that was my code. I passed that. I did that. And that's basically what it boils down to when these politicians get into office, the ruling class. I think the last video I did was probably a little more clear on this than this one. But for the most part, I just wanted to get this up and reposted. Hopefully this video will do better in the algorithms. Also, in the last video was at night. And I know at night videos for some reason don't do well. I've seen that a few times. But I wanted to get this posted again. So, and I might have to do it. I might do it more and more because these are very basic, simple things that men and women have forgotten. They don't teach this stuff to you in school. And I have a few videos. Man versus person, the difference of that. The difference between a two-dimensional world and a three-dimensional world. There's 2 parts on that. Legal versus lawful, which is what this video is. Republic versus democracy, and that one's titled, Do You Uphold Your Oaths? So these are basic, very basic, simple things that will really open up your mind to a whole new world that has been brainwashed out of you. All right, enjoy and God bless.